The camp closed years ago, but the bloodstains were never cleaned and the killer never left. Everyone joked about it on the drive-in. That was how it always started, with laughter that felt a little too loud and forced, echoing inside the van as pine trees swallowed the road. The rusted sign for Blackwood Summer Camp leaned sideways, half buried in weeds, like it was tired of warning people away. None of them noticed how the air changed when they crossed the old gate, how the forest seemed to pull inward, closing behind them without a sound. They parked near what used to be the main lodge. The building sagged under its own weight, windows dark, roofline warped like a broken spine. Cameras came out immediately. This was supposed to be a documentary, something edgy and ironic for their channel. Murder camp, lost legends, easy views, yet no one rushed inside. They all stood there, listening, waiting for something to move first. When nothing did, that somehow felt worse. Inside, the smell hit them. Old wood, mold, and something faintly metallic that didn't belong to rot alone. A flashlight beam caught the floor, and someone went quiet. The stains were still there. Brownish, smeared into the grain, trailing toward the hallway like someone had tried to crawl. The record said the camp shut down after a series of killings decades ago. Unsolved, bodies found in cabins, some never recovered. What the records didn't say was why the stains were never scrubbed away. They split up to get footage. That was the first real mistake, though no one would admit it yet. 2 headed toward the bunks by the lake. 2 went deeper into the woods to film the old ropes course. The rest stayed near the lodge, pretending the daylight made them safe. Somewhere, overhead, a loose beam creaked, even though no one touched it. Someone asked if that was the wind. No one answered. The cabins by the lake were worse than the lodge. Doors hung open, hinges eaten by rust. Inside one, a mattress was still on the floor, collapsed inward like something heavy had pressed into it for years. Names were carved into the walls, some crossed out, some scratched over so deeply the wood splintered. One name had been gouged out completely, leaving only raw, pale scars. It made them wonder who had wanted it erased so badly, and why. A scream echoed from the woods, short, cut off too fast to be a prank. Everyone froze, listening for a laugh that never came. Radios crackled with static when they tried to call out. Phones showed no signal, even though they had bars on the drive-in. The forest felt thicker now, trunks closer together, shadows longer than they should have been in late afternoon. Someone whispered that they should leave. Someone else said not yet. They needed the footage. They followed the sound toward the trees. Halfway there, they found the camera first. It lay face down in the dirt, lens cracked, still recording. When they picked it up, the playback showed shaking footage of the trail, breathing too fast, then a dark shape crossing behind the trees, tall, still, watching. The scream followed, louder this time, and then the image slammed sideways as if the camera had been knocked from the hand. That was when they noticed the footprints. Deep impressions in the soil, spaced too evenly, circling the clearing instead of leading away. Whoever made them hadn't been running. They'd been pacing, waiting. It raised a question none of them wanted to say out loud. If the killer was only a legend, why did the forest still seem to know exactly where to funnel them? They ran back toward the lodge as daylight drained from the sky. The sun dipped behind the trees too quickly, like it was being pulled down. When they reached the clearing, the van was still there, but something was wrong. One tire was shredded, sliced clean through, not blown, cut. On the hood, carved into the dust with deliberate, careful strokes, was a symbol none of them recognized, but all of them felt uneasy looking at. As darkness settled, the camp came alive with sound, not animals, not wind, footsteps on old boards, a slow drag across wood. Somewhere nearby, something heavy breathed, unhurried, patient. The legend had never been about a man snapping and killing once. It had always been about something that stayed, learning the camp, memorizing paths, setting traps, and as the first light snapped off behind them, one truth became impossible to ignore. They weren't here to document the story. They were here to continue it. The darkness didn't fall all at once. It crept, pooling between the cabins, soaking into the ground, turning familiar shapes into threats. Someone finally locked the lodge doors, though none of them said why. They all knew a lock wouldn't stop whatever had cut the tire with surgical calm. It was just something to do with their hands, a way to pretend control still existed. They counted heads. One was missing. No one wanted to say her name. Saying it felt like inviting something closer. They checked the cameras they still had, rewinding footage with shaking fingers. In one clip, filmed earlier that afternoon, she stood behind them near the tree line. She hadn't been alone. A shape lingered just beyond her shoulder, blurred, almost mistaken for shadow, almost. The realization crawled through them slowly. Whatever hunted this place had already chosen its order. A crash sounded from the back hallway. Old lockers rattled, metal doors slamming one by one, as if something large had brushed past them without care. They backed away, breath shallow, every instinct screaming to stay silent. The sound stopped inches from the door. For a moment, nothing happened. Then came a soft scrape, slow and deliberate, like a blade testing wood. The question settled in their minds at the same time. If it knew they were here, why wasn't it rushing in? They fled through a side exit, spilling into the open ground between cabins. The moon was wrong, too bright, casting shadows that bent where they shouldn't. Traps revealed themselves only after they were triggered. A wire snapped tight around an ankle, yanking one of them to the ground with a scream that echoed far too clearly. When they tried to cut him free, they saw the wire wasn't tied to anything. It disappeared into the dirt, as if the earth itself was holding him. They left him. They told themselves they would come back. The forest answered with laughter that didn't belong to any animal. It came from everywhere and nowhere, stitched between the trees. Symbols appeared carved into trunks they swore had been blank minutes earlier. The same symbol from the van hood, older than rust, older than the camp. It made them wonder if the killer had ever been human at all, or if people had just been convenient tools. The lake appeared ahead, black and glassy, reflecting nothing. One cabin still had a light on. That was impossible. The power had been cut for years. As they approached, they saw movement inside, silhouettes pacing back and forth. Relief surged too fast, too desperate. When they burst through the door, the room was empty. The light snapped off. Behind them, the door slammed shut on its own. The walls were covered now. Photos, old newspaper clippings, Polaroids taped in careful rows. Every victim from decades past stared back at them, frozen in moments before death. Newer photos had been added, grainy stills from earlier that day. Them laughing, them driving in, them entering the camp. Someone had been filming long before they arrived. Someone who knew they would. A voice finally spoke, not loud, not rushed. It came from the ceiling, from the walls, from inside their own heads. It wasn't a voice meant for conversation. It was a reminder. The camp was never abandoned. It was tended, fed. Every few years, it needed to wake up, to be remembered. The killings weren't accidents. They were maintenance. The door opened on its own. Outside, the missing girl stood waiting, or what wore her shape. Her eyes were wrong, too dark, reflecting nothing. She smiled, but her mouth didn't move. Behind her, the trees leaned inward, branches knitting together, sealing every path out. The killer stepped forward then, finally visible, tall, wrapped in layers of old clothing and something darker beneath, moving with purpose that felt ancient. They understood too late. The documentary had never been about exposure. It was an invitation. Cameras drew attention. Attention fed the thing that lived here. And now, With witnesses gathered and fear thick in the air, the hunt could end the way it always did, with silence.